When you walk up to a tree, what's the first thing you notice? Maybe it's the overall shape, maybe the bark, maybe the leaves scattered on the ground beneath it. Experienced arborists often identify trees almost instantly, sometimes without even realizing how many clues they are processing. For the board-certified Master Arborist exam, plant identification is not just about memorizing species. It's about understanding morphology, taxonomy, and how plant traits relate to selection, adaptability, and performance in real landscapes. In this podcast, we're going to explore the language arborists use to identify and select trees. Understanding this language helps you diagnose problems, communicate with other professionals, and select the right tree for the right site. And it also shows up frequently on certification exams. Let's start with the big picture. All trees belong to the plant kingdom. Within that kingdom, most trees we work with are vascular plant species, meaning they contain specialized tissues that move water and nutrients through the plant. Within the kingdom, plants are organized using taxonomy. Taxonomy is the scientific system used to classify organisms based on shared characteristics. In this system, plants are grouped hierarchically into division phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You may also see the term phylum used interchangeably with division in plant classification. The naming system used for species is called nomenclature. Each species name includes two parts, the genus and the specific epithet. Together, they form the species name. For example, Acer rubrum. Acer is the genus. Rubrum is the specific epithet. Sometimes classification becomes even more specific. Plants may be categorized into subspecies, variety, or forma when slight but consistent differences occur within a species. In cultivated plants, we often encounter the term cultivar. A cultivar is a cultivated variety selected for desirable traits, such as growth habit, flower color, or disease resistance. Many cultivars are produced through clones, meaning genetically identical plants propagated from a single parent. Hybrids are another category you should recognize. A hybrid results from crossing two different species, or sometimes two genera. Now, why does this matter to arborists? Because genetic origin affects performance. Some cultivars are selected specifically as resistant varieties for pests or diseases. Others are chosen for aesthetic characteristics or structural traits. And when we talk about plant selection, provenance becomes important. Provenance refers to the geographic origin of plant material. Trees from different regions often exhibit different hardiness and adaptability to environmental conditions. Hardiness describes a plant's ability to survive low temperatures. Adaptability refers more broadly to how well a species tolerates varying environmental conditions, such as soil type, drought, or pollution. Closely related to this concept is acclimation. Acclimation describes the physiological adjustments a plant makes when gradually exposed to new environmental conditions. This is something arborists see often when trees are transplanted from nurseries into urban landscapes. Now let's talk about species origin. A native species evolved in a particular region and ecosystem. An introduced species is brought into an area where it did not historically occur. Some introduced species become naturalized species, meaning they establish stable populations without direct human assistance. However, some introduced species become invasive species, spreading aggressively and disrupting native biodiversity. Biodiversity is the variety of life within an ecosystem. Maintaining biodiversity in urban forests improves resilience against pests, diseases, and environmental stress. This is a major concept in modern arboriculture. Now let's shift into plant structure. Much of tree identification relies on morphology. Morphology refers to the physical form and structure of plant parts. One of the first traits arborists look at is leaf arrangement. Leaves may be arranged opposite, alternate, or whorled along the stem. Opposite leaves occur in pairs at each node. Alternate leaves occur one at a time along the stem. Whorled leaves form a ring around the stem at a single node. Speaking of nodes, a node is the point where leaves or buds attach to the stem. The space between nodes is called the internode. Buds are also extremely useful for winter identification. A bud is an undeveloped shoot that may grow into leaves, flowers, or stems. At the tip of a twig, you will usually find the terminal bud, responsible for extending the main shoot. Along the sides of the stem, you'll see lateral bud structures. When these buds form in the axil, the angle between a leaf and the stem, they are called axillary bud structures. Below fallen leaves, you may see a leaf scar marking where the leaf was previously attached. These details are incredibly helpful when using an identification key. An identification key guides you through a sequence of choices based on plant traits until you arrive at the correct species. Now let's move to leaves themselves. Leaves may be categorized as simple leaf or compound leaf structures. A simple leaf has a single blade attached to a petiole. The blade is the broad, flat portion responsible for photosynthesis. In contrast, a compound leaf consists of multiple leaflets attached to a central structure. In pinnate compound leaf structures, the leaflets are arranged along a central axis. In palmate compound leaves, the leaflets radiate from a single point. Some species even have bipinnate leaves, where each leaflet is further divided. When examining compound leaves, remember that each leaflet may attach via a small stalk called a petiolule. Leaf identification also relies on other details. The leaf base describes the shape where the blade meets the petiole. The leaf apex describes the tip of the leaf. The leaf margin describes the edge of the blade. Margins may be entire, meaning smooth. They may be serrate, meaning saw-toothed. Some leaves are double serrate, where each tooth contains smaller teeth. Others may be dentate. Leaf shape is another important characteristic. A cordate leaf has a heart-shaped base. Leaves may also have lobes. The indentation between lobes is called a sinus. Leaf veins also provide clues. Venation refers to the pattern of veins within the leaf. In addition to leaves, stems offer identification clues. Lenticel structures are small openings in bark that allow gas exchange. Surface texture may include pubescence, meaning fine hairs on leaves or stems. Branch structure is also diagnostic. Trees may have an excurrent growth form, where one central trunk dominates the canopy. Other species display decurrent branching, where multiple scaffold branches spread outward. These traits define the tree's habit, or overall growth form. Now here's where leaf types intersect with plant evolution. Trees generally fall into two major groups. Angiosperm trees produce flowers and seeds enclosed within fruits. Gymnosperm trees produce seeds that are not enclosed within fruits. Conifers are gymnosperms that produce seeds in cones. Instead of broad leaves, conifers typically have needle foliage. Angiosperms, on the other hand, produce a wide variety of leaf types and reproductive structures. Flower clusters are called inflorescent structures. Some species produce specialized structures like catkin flowers, which are elongated drooping flower clusters. The reproductive structures of flowers include the ovary, which contains developing seeds. After pollination and fertilization, the ovary develops into fruit. Different fruit types also aid identification. A drupe is a fleshy fruit with a single seed inside a hard pit. A samara is a winged fruit that aids wind dispersal, like those produced by maples. In gymnosperms, seeds develop within a cone. Another characteristic arborists must recognize involves plant reproductive systems. Monoecious species produce both male and female flowers on the same plant. Dioecious species produce male and female flowers on separate plants. Understanding this difference matters when selecting trees for landscapes. Female trees of some species may produce messy fruit. Male trees may release heavy pollen. Both considerations affect landscape function and client satisfaction. You'll also see reproductive structures like bracts structures that protect developing flowers. Now let's briefly discuss plant groups you may encounter. Dicotyledon plants typically produce two seed leaves and often have broad leaves with netted venation. Monocotyledon plants produce a single seed leaf and often have parallel venation. Palms fall into the monocotyledon group and are botanically distinct from typical woody trees. Their foliage may be palmate or feather-like. Ferns are another plant group you might encounter in shaded landscapes. Their leaves are called frond structures. Now let's talk about growth patterns. Many trees exhibit indeterminate growth, meaning they continue producing new shoots and leaves throughout the growing season under favorable conditions. This continuous growth influences pruning strategies and canopy development. Another practical identification feature arborists use in the field is trunk caliper. Caliper measures the diameter of a young tree trunk and is commonly used in nursery stock specifications. Understanding caliper helps ensure proper tree size at planting and appropriate root to shoot balance. Now let's connect all of this to tree selection. When selecting trees for urban environments, arborists must evaluate several factors. First is adaptability. Can the species tolerate urban soil compaction, heat, drought, or pollution? Second is hardiness. Will the species survive winter temperatures in that region? Third is landscape function. Is the tree intended for shade, screening, wildlife habitat, or visual aesthetic value? The tree's habit, mature size, and structural form all influence its landscape function. And finally, species diversity is critical. Over-reliance on a single species can lead to catastrophic loss if pests or diseases emerge. That's why promoting biodiversity in urban forests is such an important management strategy. Now imagine you're inspecting a planting site. A client asks you to recommend a tree. You consider the climate, soil conditions, space limitations, and desired aesthetic outcome. You think about whether a native species might perform well. You evaluate whether certain cultivars offer improved disease resistance. You consider whether the species might become invasive. This is the kind of integrated thinking that separates a technician from a master arborist. And it's exactly the type of reasoning tested on the BCMA exam. Before we wrap up, let's reinforce a few connections. Plant identification relies on morphology, including leaf arrangement, leaf margin, buds, nodes, and branching habit. Taxonomy organizes plants into kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, using standardized nomenclature. Tree selection involves understanding hardiness, adaptability, provenance, and landscape function. And arborists must consider biodiversity, native species, and invasive species when managing urban forests. When these concepts come together, plant identification becomes more than memorization. It becomes a practical tool for diagnosing problems, selecting appropriate trees, and managing healthy landscapes. In the next chapter, we'll move below ground and explore soil science. Because once you understand how soil structure, nutrients, and microorganisms interact with roots, many of the growth patterns we discussed today start to make much more sense.
Thanks for listening to the Arborist podcast. Let's keep building your arborist knowledge one domain at a time. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe.